The small West African village of Nsakara had once lived in a rhythm as steady as the seasons. At dawn, the farmers moved into the fields with quiet pride, their hoes slicing through the earth in unison. Children played among the mango trees, and the soft hum of evening storytelling wrapped the community in a sense of belonging. But peace had slowly drained from Nsakara. For months, strange happenings pierced the calm nights, unsettling even the elders who claimed nothing in the world could surprise them anymore. The center of the fear was a young boy named Kojo, a once gentle child who used to run laughing through the village paths. Without warning, he began speaking in voices no one recognized, voices layered and fractured, like entire groups of unseen people arguing through him. His cries twisted in the night air, echoing across the village like the wails of trapped spirits. His parents, Afi and Kwabena, lived in a state of terror so deep that sleep became foreign to them. They watched their son's body jerk and contort as though held by the hands of something they could not see. His mother whispered prayers until her throat burned. His father carried protective charms that offered no comfort. Even the animals sensed the disorder. Goats bleated nervously and turned away from the family compound. Dogs whimpered at sunset and hid beneath porches. The air itself changed, once warm and familiar. It now thickened every evening with an icy sting that sent shivers down the villagers' spines. Rumors took root. Some said malevolent spirits, angry at a broken ancestral pact, had sought a vessel. Others whispered that Kojo had wandered to near the forbidden forest and brought something back with him. The elders met under the great baobab tree, the flickering lamplight bouncing off their worried faces. Their verdict was solemn. Do not go near the boy after sunset. Something walks with him. Night after night, Kojo's suffering grew worse. He thrashed violently as though wrestling with invisible shackles. His once bright eyes dulled, replaced by a strange depth, cold, ancient, and furious. He no longer sounded like a child at all, but like something far older than the village itself. Fear spread like a shadow over Nsakara, and the people whispered a single hope: only someone with profound spiritual strength, a person unshaken by the darkness, could free the boy from whatever held him captive. Father Amadou, a traveling priest known across distant towns for his gentle nature and unwavering humility, arrived in Nsakara almost by accident. He had been journeying between villages, carrying little more than a worn Bible, a sack of healing herbs, and a faith that guided every step he took. The moment he stepped onto the dusty path leading into Nsakara, he felt something unsettling. The air pressed heavily upon him, as if the earth itself whispered warnings. Shadows clung to the edges of houses even in daylight. The villagers rushed to him with anxious eyes, voices trembling as they spoke of Kojo. Some begged, some cried, and others simply pointed toward the cursed home, as though afraid to utter its name. Father Amadou listened without interruption. His calm presence soothed the trembling crowd. As he walked toward Kojo's house, he prayed beneath his breath, each word steady and deliberate. The door trembled ever so slightly, as if disturbed by a wind that did not exist inside. Kojo's parents looked like ghosts of themselves, drained, sleep-deprived, and clinging to collapsing hope. The house smelled of burnt herbs and fear. Kojo sat crouched in a corner, knees pulled to his chest. His small body trembled, and his lips moved ceaselessly, muttering in voices that seemed to overlap like broken echoes. None of them belonged to him. When Father Amodu entered, Kojo's head snapped upward so fast it seemed inhuman. His eyes, once warm and brown, now shimmered with an eerie, unnatural light. A low, guttural laugh crawled out of the boy's throat. It was jagged, mocking, and completely devoid of innocence. Yet Father Amodu felt no fear. He approached slowly, kneeling beside the trembling child. His voice remained calm as he whispered a prayer, soft yet powerful, filling the room with a warmth so gentle it felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. Immediately, the temperature shifted. A cold force recoiled from Kojo's body, shrinking back from the priest's presence. In the shadows of the room, something unseen stirred a darkness, aware that it had met an adversary it could not easily overwhelm. The battle for Kojo's soul had begun. Father Amodu began the first deliverance prayer before the moon had fully risen, its pale glow barely cresting the tops of the palm trees. The small clay lamp flickered beside him, casting trembling shadows across the mud walls. Every breath he took felt heavy, as if the very air resisted the words forming in his mouth. As soon as he started praying, Kojo's body convulsed, bending in impossible angles as though invisible hands were wrestling for control over his limbs. His teeth clenched so tightly that his jaw trembled. At times it seemed as if several forces were pulling in opposite directions, trying to tear the boy's spirit loose from his flesh. Father Amodu pressed a steady hand against Kojo's forehead, whispering sacred words that carried generations of spiritual authority. But the moment his skin touched the boy, a violent jolt surged through him, a shock of raw resistance. Thick with malice, his fingers burned with a heat that did not come from fire. Then the atmosphere changed. The air, which had been still as a held breath, suddenly exploded into a wild storm of unseen energy. The walls groaned. Clay pots rattled on shelves. The windows thumped and shook violently, even though outside the night remained eerily calm. Kojo's scream ripped through the room, yet not just his voice. It came in layers, deep, shrill, ancient, young, a disturbing chorus of entities fighting for dominance within one small body. But Father Amodu did not falter. He prayed louder, his voice rising above the cacophony. Each word he spoke carried weight, sharp, cutting through the murk of spiritual darkness that curled like fog round the boy. The spirits mocked him viciously. They spat insults through Kojo's lips, taunting the priest with venomous fury. "Leave him. He belongs to us." But Amodu only pressed on. His prayers gained force, like a river swelling from a distant storm. A warmth, gentle yet fierce, spread from his hands, pushing back against the suffocating cold that filled the room. Hours crawled by. Sweat soaked his robe. Kojo shook so violently the mat beneath him tore in places. The lamp dimmed, then flared, reacting to the unseen battle raging around them. The night felt endless, time stretching into something shapeless and oppressive. But the priest did not break. He remained, planted, like an oak tree enduring a tempest. And by the first orange rays of dawn, something shifted. The spirits grew uneasy. Their voices, once booming, wavered with frustration. They realized that Father Amadu was not a man who would kneel before darkness. They retreated for the moment, hissing like wounded beasts. The first night had ended, but the war had only begun. Word of the priest's battle spread across Nsakara faster than wildfire leaping through dry brush. By sunrise, nearly every villager knew the dark forces had finally been challenged. People gathered outside Kojo's home, their faces etched with fear, curiosity, and burning hope. Mothers clutched their infants, elders leaned on walking sticks, whispering old proverbs meant to shield the heart from terror. Then someone began to pray. Another joined. Soon, dozens of voices rose in trembling unity. Women sang hymns passed down through bloodline songs, used by their ancestors in times of drought, war, plague, and spiritual danger. The melodies wrapped around the house like a protective cloak, vibrating in the cool morning air. The men lit torches even though the sun had risen, believing the flames would repel wandering night spirits still lingering after the long confrontation. The torches formed a wide circle, flickering like a ring of guardians around the compound. Kojo's mother, Afi, knelt near the doorway. Her face was streaked with tears, but her voice, shaky though it was, did not stop calling for mercy. She pressed her palms together so tightly her knuckles whitened. Every few moments, a quiet sob escaped her, but she refused to leave her spot. The entire village seemed to hold its breath. Even the animals fell silent. Not a single goat bleated, not a rooster crowed, not a cow grunted. It was as if the natural world understood the sacred battle unfolding behind the mud walls. Father Amadu stepped outside briefly, his robes drenched in sweat, his breathing labored. The villagers pressed forward, but he raised a hand gently. "Do not fear," he said softly. "Your prayers strengthen the light." He asked them to continue, and they did, louder and more fiercely than before. Their united voices lifted into the sky, gathering power like a rising storm of hope. Inside, Kojo's screams softened for the first time in weeks. The oppressive darkness that had taken root in the home began to thin. Its hold loosening, the spirits recoiled, shrinking from the combined force of communal faith. For the first time, the tide had shifted. On the third night, Father Amadu entered the home with renewed resolve. He could feel the atmosphere shifting darker, heavier, more concentrated than before. It was the stillness. Before a final strike, Kojo lay on his mat, silent at first, his chest rising in shallow breaths. But as the priest knelt beside him, the boy's body went rigid. His fingers curled into claw-like shapes, digging into the mat so fiercely that bits of straw tore loose. Then a voice deep and gravelly rumbled through Kojo's throat. "He is ours. Do not interfere." Father Amadu's heart stilled, but he showed no fear. He commanded the presence to declare itself, invoking divine authority that had sent many spirits fleeing in other villages. The air grew colder. The shadows darkened. Then the voices came. One spirit spoke with a hollow, windswept tone, calling itself an ancient wanderer being drifting through ruined lands, feeding on the lost and abandoned. Its words carried sorrow twisted into hatred. Another voice rose, shrill and triumphant, boasting of spreading sickness among families, turning joy into despair, collapsing households through whispers of dread. A third spirit screeched, its voice like metal tearing, "I feast on hopelessness. This child is full of it." Their voices overlapped in chaotic fury, roaring through Kojo's small body until the walls quaked. Shadows danced wildly across the room, stretching and distorting like monstrous silhouettes. Father Amadu did not back away. He rebuked them one by one, his voice steady, unwavering. His prayers cracked through the suffocating darkness like lightning tearing the night sky. The spirits shrieked in rage. Kojo's body flailed violently, as if thrown by invisible winds. A stool toppled. A calabash shattered against the floor. Yet with every prayer, something miraculous happened. Thin layers of shadow peeled off Kojo's essence. His features softened momentarily, his true self flickering through the darkness that smothered him. Father Amadu sensed it. The final battle had not only begun, it was imminent. He steadied himself, knowing the hardest night awaited him. A night where his faith would be tested to its last breath. On the fourth night, something unnatural settled over Nsakara. The sky, which had been clear at sunset, darkened with an eerie heaviness, swallowing the stars one by one. No storm had been forecast. No wind stirred the treetops, yet thunder rolled slow, dragging, like the growl of some colossal creature waking from centuries of sleep. The villagers felt it first. In their bones, mothers clutched children close, elders paused mid-step, their eyes narrowing toward the heavens. Even the insects fell silent. It was as though the world itself sensed that the veil between realms had thinned to a dangerous degree. Inside Kojo's home, Father Amadu felt the shift like a sudden weight on his chest. The darkness gathering outside was no ordinary weather, it was a summons. A final attempt by the spirits to anchor themselves in the physical world. He moved carefully, preparing the sacred items he had blessed earlier that morning. He placed a small bowl of consecrated water near Kojo's mat, laid palm leaves across the threshold, and held tightly to the wooden cross polished by years of use. Kojo lay trembling violently, his small body curling into itself as if trying to resist some inner tide. He whispered fragments of words, broken syllables, half-formed sentences, and strange guttural sounds that slipped into and out of human speech. It was as though the spirits inside him were losing their ability to cling to language, unraveling under the relentless prayers. Father Amadu lit a small oil lamp, and immediately its flame thrashed wildly. Bending sideways though the air remained perfectly still, the room brightened, shadows crawling away from the flickering, light like startled animals. Then the temperature dropped. A sudden, biting chill filled the home, so intense that the priest could see his breath fog the air. It pressed against him, not like cold weather, but like a conscious force, an enemy pushing back, testing his resolve. Kojo's eyes snapped open, glowing faintly with a sickly, unnatural hue. The darkness within him surged, a final, desperate wave. The mat beneath him trembled, the walls vibrated, clay pots rattled like teeth. Chattering in fear, it was the spirit's last attempt to break the priest's courage. to intimidate him into withdrawing before the final blow. Then a voice thundered through Kojo, so deep it seemed to vibrate the very earth beneath them. "He will belong to US forever." The words snarled through the air, heavy with centuries of malevolence. But Father Amadu stood tall, lifting his cross high above the boy. He felt no fear, only a fierce, righteous authority swelling within him. When he spoke, his voice was not merely loud, it was resonant, echoing through the home with a force that startled even him. "You have nitrogen monoxide claim here. Release him in the name of the Most High." The walls shuddered as if struck. The shadows recoiled instantly, retreating like beasts burned by divine fire. A harsh, shrieking hiss filled the room, swirling around the ceiling like a cyclone of rage. Kojo screamed a sound raw and primal as the spirits inside him were dragged unwillingly toward the edge of expulsion. His back arched, his fists clenched, his voice cracked into multiple tones before dissolving into a cry that sounded purely human for the first time in days. Outside, the villagers had gathered again, though fear weighed heavily on their hearts. They watched the sky above Nsakara twist and churn unnaturally, clouds spiraling in shapes no weather had ever formed. Some gasped, others knelt, many prayed. Everyone knew something powerful, something otherworldly was happening within that home. The battle had reached its climax. The outcome would determine whether dawn would bring peace or mourning. After days without rest, Father Amadu's body finally began to betray him. His eyelids felt like they carried stones. His limbs ached as though he had walked across the entire savannah barefoot. His hands trembled each time he lifted them in prayer, and his once strong voice had become cracked, drifting between whispers and strained gasps. The weight of Kojo's suffering pressed on him like an invisible burden. Every scream the boy released carved deeper into the priest's heart. Every convulsion, every whispered curse, every moment of torment made him truly fear that he might fail the child who had no one else strong enough to stand for him. The spirits sensed it immediately. They circled him like predators, scenting weakness. Their voices seeped through Kojo's lips like venom. "You are only a man. You cannot fight us. Your God is far from you. Has he not abandoned you? Rest, priest. Give up. Let him be ours." Their whispers crawled into his mind, wrapping around his doubts. Amadu's chest tightened. His breath came shallow. His knees buckled, and he sank to the floor, fists pressed against the cold ground. Heart pounding with exhaustion and fear, he closed his eyes, and a crushing silence filled him. Doubt sat heavily on his shoulders, whispering its own poison. Maybe they're right. Maybe no human can endure this. Maybe I have reached the end of my strength. But then through the fog of despair memories began to rise. He saw the villagers outside, their faces lifted to the sky despite their fear. He saw women singing ancient hymns, voices trembling yet unwavering. He saw the ring of torches lit by the men, forming a barrier of hope. He saw the boy's mother, Afi, kneeling with her face buried in her palms, whispering, "Please, save my child." Love, not power, stirred inside him. Not divine fire or supernatural strength, but the simple, profound love of a community refusing to let a child be lost. And suddenly the weight on his shoulders lightened. Father Amadou rose slowly, bracing his hand on the wall for support. His voice, though weary, steadied as he began to pray again. Each word rang clearer, stronger than the last. The spirits shrieked in frustration. The lamp's flame brightened, casting warm light against the suffocating shadows. The room once again filled with a glow not from fire, but from faith reclaiming its ground. The battle was not over, but Amadou was no longer standing alone. As dawn crept toward the fifth day, the air in Kojo's room thickened until it felt like breathing smoke. The walls seemed to close in, pulsing faintly as if responding to the dark forces gathering within. Without warning, Kojo's body jolted a pright eyes shut. Leaning stiff-fanned, he lifted slowly from the mat. His heels hovered above the ground, his arms hanging limp at his sides. The unnatural rise sent a wave of horror through the small room. Father Amadou stepped forward with deliberate calm. He knew this was at the final test of everything he had poured out over the last days. A storm of voices erupted from Kojo, louder and more chaotic than ever before. They twisted together in a horrifying symphony of rage, fear, desperation, and ancient fury. "We will not leave. He is ours. You cannot drive us out." Their words whipped around the room like a tempest. The walls shook. The roof creaked as if under invisible weight. Father Amadou lifted his cross, gripping it with both hands, with a voice that rose from the deepest core of his soul. He commanded, "By the sacred name, above all names, leave this child now." A violent force slammed into him. Kojo's body thrashed, wildly, flinging itself against the walls, then the floor, then twisting mid-air. Each movement was sharper, quicker, more frantic than the last. But the priest held him, wrapping his arms around the boy to keep him from harm. He kept praying, tears running down his face, sweat mixing with dust, then light, not the yellow flicker of the lamp, not the pale dawn, filtering through the window. A radiant, piercing light burst into the room from no earthly source. It washed over the walls, poured across the mat, and enveloped Kojo completely. The spirits screamed, a sound so raw and primal. It shook the ground beneath the house. A final, earth-shattering cry tore from Kojo's throat, echoing through every hut, every field, every path of Nsakara. Villagers leapt from their beds, hearts pounding, knowing the climax had come. Then suddenly, silence, heavy, deep, complete. Kojo's body went limp. The voices stopped. The darkness vanished, like smoke dissolving into wind. The boy collapsed into Father Amadou's arms, unconscious but finally utterly free. Outside, the unnatural sky began to clear. The first true sunrise in days broke over Nsakara. Peace had returned. Hours passed. The priest sat beside Kojo, barely awake, his body battered by exhaustion, but his heart full of quiet hope. At last, Kojo's fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. He took a slow, steady breath and opened his eyes. They were clear, bright, warm, and unmistakably human again. A cry of relief escaped his mother before she even realized she'd made a sound. She rushed to his side, gathering him into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Kojo leaned into her embrace, confused but comforted. "I feel lighter," he whispered. touching his chest, like something heavy, finally fell away. Villagers crowded around the doorway, cheering, clapping, praising God. Some fell to their knees. Others lifted their hands to the sky. The whole village trembled with joy. Father Amadou sat in the corner, slumped but smiling faintly. His entire body ached, but gratitude washed over him with every breath he managed. Kojo reached for the priest's hand. "I remember," the boy said quietly. "I remember the shadows all round me." He swallowed, voice trembling. "But I also remember something warm. It pushed them away. It protected me." Father Amadou squeezed his hand gently. "You were never alone. The villagers brought water, food, cola nuts, and small gifts, tokens of gratitude. Some wept openly as they thanked the priest. That day became one of celebration. Drums sounded across Nsakara. Women danced with bright cloths, swirling in their hands. Children laughed freely, no longer afraid of the setting sun. Families cooked together, sharing meals in honor of Kojo's deliverance. And Kojo, finally free from the darkness, lay down to sleep. This time, peacefully, fully, without fear, for the first time in many long nights. With the demons finally expelled, Kojo's recovery unfolded with astonishing speed, as though his body had simply been waiting for permission to live again. His strength returned steadily, his appetite grew, and soon his laughter once, the bright music of Nsakara drifted through the village paths once more, bringing joy to those who had feared they might never hear it again. The elders gathered to watch him walk, run, and speak with renewed vigor. They nodded to one another, whispering among themselves, "A child who survives such darkness," they said reverently, "is a child marked for greatness." Kojo embraced his second chance at life with unshakable determination. He rose early each morning to join his father in the fields, his hands digging into the soil with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. Every grain of millet he planted felt like a declaration. "I am alive. I am free. I am meant to do more." Villagers visited daily, some with gifts of fruit or cloth, others with whispered blessings or symbols of protection. They came not out of pity, but admiration, for they saw in Kojo a strength forged through suffering. Inside the boy, something had changed. A quiet flame flickered steady, warm, and resolute. He felt drawn toward helping others, toward protecting his people the way Father Amadou had protected him. He listened more than he spoke. He worked harder than he ever had. And when silent moments came, he prayed with a depth far beyond his years. His parents watched in wonder. Their once frightened son now radiated a peace and wisdom that made even the elders pause. There was a stillness around him now, a sense that he walked with a shield no evil spirit could penetrate. Father Amadou noticed it too. Whenever the priest visited the family compound, he saw a glow in the boy's eyes, a divine calm, as if the heavens themselves had placed a hand on Kojo's shoulder. The priest often paused in conversation, quietly marveling at the transformation. Kojo made a promise in his own heart. He would not waste his second chance. He would grow, he would learn, and he would ensure that no darkness ever again threatened Nsakara or its people. His journey toward purpose had only begun. Before leaving Nsakara, Father Amadou gathered the villagers. Beneath the ancient baobab tree, the same tree under which the elders had first discussed Kojo's affliction in hushed voices, now the atmosphere was different. Hope filled the air. Light shone through the branches like blessings descending on the village. Father Amadu's voice, though soft, carried across the crowd with gentle authority. He spoke of faith, the kind that holds firm when the darkness thickens. He spoke of unity there, strength found when a people stand as one. And he spoke of the eternal truth that light, no matter how small, always conquers the shadows. Kojo sat in the front, legs crossed, eyes fixed on the priest with unwavering attention. He absorbed every word as if they were seeds planted directly into his spirit. When Father Amadu finished speaking, he placed a warm hand on Kojo's head. The touch was tender, full of pride. He whispered a blessing meant not just for protection, but also for purpose, a blessing that would follow Kojo for all the days of his life. Your survival, the priest said softly, is not merely a miracle. It is a calling. Walk in it boldly. Tears glistened in the eyes of many villagers. Some wept openly. They knew the priest had pushed himself to the brink for them, for their child, for their peace. Before departing, Father Amadu left behind sacred water, protective scriptures, and instructions for the elders' teachings on how to guard the village spiritually, how to stay united, and how to keep fear from ever taking root again. We will honor this legacy, the elders vowed, touching their hands to their chests. Kojo stood a few paces away, watching the priest walk down the narrow path leading out of Nsakara. A deep connection pulsed in his chest, one formed through struggle, faith, and shared courage. As the priest disappeared into the horizon, Kojo felt something settle quietly inside him, a sense of direction, a sense of destiny, a sense of responsibility. That day marked the end of the darkest chapter the village had known. But it also marked the birth of Kojo's new resolve, the determination to bring good, guidance, and protection to his people for the rest of his life. His journey had just begun. As the seasons passed, Kojo grew into a young man whose name became synonymous with integrity and diligence. His transformation from a boy once gripped by darkness into a beacon of resilience astonished everyone. He walked through Nsakara with an air of calm focus, his eyes bright with purpose. He spent his days moving from one part of the village to another, eager to learn from every elder and artisan he met. From the farmers, he studied soil, rainfall, and planting cycles. From the carpenters, he learned how wood could speak if one listened, how to select the right tree, how to shape it, how to respect it. Traders taught him the rhythms of negotiation, the importance of fairness, and the subtle art of reading people. Kojo absorbed every lesson with a hunger that felt almost prophetic. It was as if his mind collected skills not merely for survival, but for a future much larger than himself. The elders exchanged thoughtful glances whenever Kojo approached. There was something unmistakable in the way he spoke, clarity, patience, and the quiet authority of one who had already known war on a spiritual battlefield. Kojo had also developed a profound sensitivity to the needs of others. When a neighbor's well collapsed after heavy rains, he didn't wait for someone else to take responsibility. Instead, he rallied young men from the village, organized tasks, and helped rebuild the well stronger than before. When livestock fell sick, Kojo visited the elders who knew the healing power of leaves, roots, and bark. He learned the herbs by heart and shared the remedies with clarity. The people began to rely on him not because he sought praise, but because he brought solutions, not complaints. Despite his busy days, Kojo never neglected the prayer that had once saved his life. Each dawn and sunset, he knelt behind his family's home and whispered his gratitude. He prayed not out of ritual, but out of remembrance. His survival had been a gift, one he intended to honor by lifting others. As he had been lifted, his calm strength and compassionate leadership stirred something powerful. In the hearts of the villagers, they began to call him Kojo the Restorer, a title born from admiration and hope. For every broken thing he fixed, every conflict he eased, every neighbor he helped, his reputation deepened, and without realizing it, the young man had already begun shaping the future of Nsakara, one restored well, one healed animal, one act of kindness at a time. One night, as the moon shone high above Nsakara, Kojo lay asleep with the peaceful exhaustion of a man who worked with purpose, but his dreams carried him somewhere far beyond rest. He found himself standing alone in a field of shimmering golden light. The sky above him glowed as if dawn had merged with the stars, and a profound stillness settled over everything. Then, from the brightness, a familiar figure emerged. Father Amodu. His robe flowed gently even though there was no wind. His eyes were warm, filled with the same kindness Kojo remembered from childhood. Yet now there was something deeper and almost heavenly wisdom. "Kojo," the priest said, his voice gentle but firm, "your village carries untapped potential." He pointed toward Nsakara, and instantly the boy saw visions, homes repaired, wells overflowing with clean water, farms growing with abundance, children learning under shaded trees, families smiling without fear. "Blessed hands," Father Amodu continued, "must not remain idle. What you survived was not only deliverance, it was preparation." Before Kojo could speak, the vision expanded. He saw buildings rising where empty land once lay. He saw new tools forged by skilled hands. He saw a flourishing market where traders from distant towns gathered. And above it all, he felt the hum of harmony, something rare, something sacred. The golden light brightened until it enveloped him completely. Kojo woke with a gasp, his heart pounding, his skin tingling with a sense of purpose so urgent it felt like fire in his veins. Dawn had barely touched the sky, yet he knew with absolute certainty that the dream had not been ordinary. It had been a calling. He shared the vision with his parents during breakfast, hands trembling as he spoke. His mother listened with tears gathering in her eyes. His father placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Then follow it, my son." When Kojo went to the elders beneath the ancient baobab tree and told them everything, they exchanged solemn looks. Dreams like this were rare, reserved for those chosen by the ancestors or by divine purpose. "This is not to be ignored," they told him. "Visions like yours have guided great leaders." Kojo felt courage surge through him. With the elders' blessing, he began sketching plans, ideas, and projects. He listed problems and crafted solutions. He envisioned new ways to strengthen Nsakara as foundation so no shadow, spiritual or earthly, could ever weaken it again. He believed deeply that if darkness had once tried to claim him, then the light now sought to use him to heal others. The dream became a seed, and from that seed, a new era of prosperity for Nsakara began to sprout. Kojo's determination carried him far beyond the borders of Nsakara. With a small bundle of clothes and a heart full of purpose, he began traveling to the nearby towns, places bustling with voices, colors, and the rhythm of trade. These journeys were not easy. He often walked long distances under the blazing sun or through early morning mist. But every step strengthened his resolve. In every town he visited, Kojo observed silently but attentively. He watched merchants negotiate prices with a blend of firmness and respect. He studied how they stacked goods to avoid spoilage, how they recorded transactions, and how they maintained relationships with buyers. He lingered near stalls that specialized in cloth, grains, spices, and pottery, listening to every lesson hidden in their conversations. Kojo took small jobs along the way, sweeping shop floors, helping load carts, delivering messages to earn coins. No task was too small or beneath him. He saved each coin carefully, treating even the smallest earnings as seeds meant to grow. Soon he was ready to take a risk. With his savings, Kojo purchased farm produce like yams, groundnuts, and dried fish from one town, then sold them in another where the demand was higher. He didn't stop there. He began buying bolts of colorful cloth and trading them for goods that didn't normally reach Nsakara. His honesty stood out in a world where many traders cut corners. Customers trusted him immediately, sensing his sincerity and humility. Word of the young man with fair prices and a clean heart spread quickly, and soon his name traveled faster than he did. As his trading grew, Kojo reinvested every profit. He refused to indulge in luxury or pride. He remembered too well the gift of life he had been given. Every coin became a step toward his larger dream of restoring and uplifting Nsakara. His parents watched with amazement as Kojo matured into a young businessman whose discipline and principles set him apart. They marveled at how the child who once battled unseen horrors now navigated markets and negotiations with calm confidence. Whenever Kojo closed a profitable deal, he whispered a quiet prayer. Whenever he traveled home with new goods, he remembered Father Amadu's blessing. He carried humility like a cloak, never forgetting where he had once been, or who had brought him out of darkness. By the age of 20, Kojo had accumulated enough wealth to think in grander terms. But money had never been his final goal. Wealth was simply a tool, a means to fulfill the divine purpose that had been placed in his heart. And now, he was ready to begin. With his growing resources and a heart set on service, Kojo turned to the most urgent need in the village: water. For generations, Nsakara had relied on shallow, aging wells that strained during the dry season. Women often walked long distances to fetch water, and children sometimes spent hours waiting at nearly empty wells. Kojo had grown up witnessing these struggles, and he vowed to change them. Determined to create something lasting, Kojo used his savings to hire skilled workers from neighboring towns. He purchased sturdy tools, better digging equipment, and strong materials that would ensure the well stood firm for decades. Each morning, villagers gathered around the designated site, Watching as workers dug deeper into the earth, dust rose in clouds, and the sound of metal striking stone echoed across the village. Children chanted playful songs, melodies about cool water, clean hands, and the joy of a new beginning. Kojo visited the site daily, overseeing every detail with care. He insisted on fairness in wages, kindness among workers, and full transparency in how resources were used. His leadership was not loud or boastful. It was steady, gentle, and inspiring. As days passed, anticipation grew. When the earth finally yielded to the workers' tools and water burst forth with sudden force, the village erupted in jubilation. Women ululated with joy. Men beat drums until their palms stung. Children ran in circles, splashing the first bucketfuls on their faces. Elders lifted their hands in solemn gratitude. The celebration lasted long into the night, lit by torches and fueled by song. When it came time to name the well, the elders gathered and declared that it be called Amadou Spring, a tribute to the priest whose courage set all of this in motion. At the mention of Father Amadou's name, Kojo's eyes filled with tears. Memories of the priest kneeling by his side, praying until dawn, came rushing back. Kojo whispered a quiet thank you to the sky, believing the priest's spirit watched proudly from afar. The well stood as more than a structure. It was a symbol of deliverance, a symbol of community rebirth, a symbol of Kojo's transformation from a tormented child to a young man with a mission. This first project marked the beginning of a new era in Nsakara, and it marked Kojo's rise not just as a businessman, but as a leader destined to shape his people's future. The success of Amadou's spring awakened a new wave of optimism in Nsakara. With fresh water flowing and the village renewed, Kojo felt an even greater fire stir within him. It was as if each blessing he received fueled another vision, another project, another solution the village had waited generations for. He began by focusing on the land, the heartbeat of Nsakara. With his trading profits, Kojo purchased improved farming tools, stronger hoes, sharper machetes, and plows that cut the soil more efficiently. He distributed them freely among families, insisting that better harvests should never depend on wealth. The effect was immediate. Fields, once cultivated in struggle, now flourished under newfound efficiency. Yields doubled. Families who once feared dry seasons now stored surplus grain with confidence. Recognizing this abundance as an opportunity, Kojo encouraged farmers to trade beyond the village. Soon, Nsakara stood proudly in markets miles away, exchanging millet, groundnuts, and dried pepper for cloth, oil, medicine, and tools. To support the growing trade, Kojo made one of his boldest investments yet, a small truck. The villagers had never seen one up close. Children chased it down the road cheering, and elders marveled at how it could carry what once required a dozen men and hours of travel. With the truck, trade became faster, safer, and more profitable. Kojo used it not only for his own ventures, but also to assist any farmer who needed transportation. But he didn't stop there. He built Nsakara's first grain storage facility, sturdy, raised, and protected from rain and pests. For the first time, the village no longer feared spoilage during the rainy season. Food security transformed from a distant hope into a growing reality. Under Kojo's direction, everything operated with precision. Tasks were organized, responsibilities shared, and profits accounted for openly. Villagers often stood in awe at how smoothly everything ran, like a well-tuned drum played by an expert hand. Kojo believed knowledge was as valuable as tools. So he trained young men and women in basic accounting, fundamental trade skills, modern farming practices, market analysis, customer relations. Many who once felt aimless discovered purpose working beside him. His leadership made them feel capable, needed, and proud of their contributions. Most importantly, Kojo never claimed ownership of any project. "The well is ours," he'd say. "The storage facility belongs to Nsakara. These tools are for the people." His humility disarmed every fear that he sought fame. His generosity built trust, and that trust wove the villagers together stronger than ever before. Word spread far beyond Nsakara, stories of a young man who turned suffering into strength and despair into prosperity. Neighboring villages began to visit, seeking advice and inspiration. Under Kojo's guidance, Nsakara's enterprises became the backbone of a rising economy, and the village transformed into a shining example of progress born from unity. Despite the growing prosperity, Kojo recognized a deeper need, one that shaped futures and generations: education. He remembered his own childhood, the darkness he overcame, and the dream that once filled him with purpose. He knew that for Nsakara to rise fully, its children needed the tools of knowledge. Many children in the village had never held a book, read a sentence, or written their names. Their futures were limited not by potential, but by opportunity. Kojo vowed to change this. He traveled again to nearby towns, this time searching not for goods, but for teachers, individuals with passion, patience, and a desire to uplift. He offered wages that respected their skills, and accommodation so they would feel part of the community. Then, he turned his attention to the structure itself. He designed a school with spacious classrooms, filled with sunlight, a small library lined with books donated from various towns, a playground where laughter could grow alongside learning, painted walls that glowed white under the sun, a reflection of purity and hope. When construction began, excitement rippled through Nsakara. Parents lined up days before enrollment opened. Some wept openly as they filled out forms, overwhelmed that their children would receive an opportunity they themselves never had. Children arrived early on the first morning, clean, eager, and wide-eyed, holding chalk and notebooks as if holding treasures. Kojo named the institution the School of Light. The name honored his journey from the grip of darkness to the purpose-driven life he now lived. It symbolized illumination, transformation, and the knowledge that would shape generations to come. Teachers quickly realized the environment Kojo built was special. Respect flowed naturally. Encouragement was abundant. Every student felt seen, valued, and capable. Villagers contributed in every way they could. Some carved desks, others donated books passed down through families. Mothers sewed curtains and uniforms. Elders crafted chalkboards from polished wood. Education began to ripple across the village like soft waves of dawn. Children helped their parents calculate profits, read letters, and explore new ideas. Knowledge seeped into fields, homes, and hearts. Kojo often stood at the doorway of the school during morning assemblies, hands clasped behind his back, watching children recite lessons with bright, hopeful eyes. Each voice reminded him of how far he had come and how far his village could go. The School of Light was not merely a building. It was a beginning, a promise, a declaration that Nsakara's future would be shaped not by fear or tradition alone, but by learning, unity, and faith. Kojo smiled, knowing the school would outlive every hardship he had ever faced and every shadow that once tried to claim him. It would be his greatest legacy, one born not from wealth, but from purpose. After the School of Light opened its doors and began shaping young minds, Kojo continued to observe the needs of Nsakara with the keen, compassionate awareness that had guided him since childhood. One concern troubled him deeply. So many villagers still suffered from illnesses that could have been prevented or treated easily. Kojo had seen mothers walking miles under the scorching sun or heavy rain, carrying feverish children on their backs. He'd seen elders coughing through the night because medicine was too far away. He'd witnessed young women give birth at home without skilled help, placing both mother and child at unnecessary risk. The sight of such suffering weighed heavily on Kojo's spirit. He knew that a village could not prosper fully if its people remained sick or vulnerable. After nights of prayer and thoughtful planning, he reached a decision that stirred hope across Nsakara. He would build a health center. Kojo traveled again to nearby towns, meeting doctors who roamed the region providing temporary services. He spoke passionately about Nsakara's transformation, its growth, and its need for consistent medical care. Moved by his sincerity, several traveling doctors agreed to visit the village several days. Each week, skilled nurses were hired to provide daily care, checking fevers, treating infections, helping mothers prepare for childbirth, and tending to emergencies. Kojo made sure they received proper housing and respect. He wanted them to feel as much a part of the community as any villager born there. Construction began quickly. Villagers came together with enthusiasm, hauling sand, fetching wood, and molding clay bricks. They worked tirelessly, knowing this project would save lives. When the doors finally opened, the center offered vaccinations for children, safe, clean childbirth services, basic medication and herbal remedies, health education, emergency care. For the first time in Nsakara's history, pregnant women did not fear giving birth. Elders no longer endured untreated pain. Children received medicine instead of despair. The villagers named the building Hope House, a place where healing replaced fear, where knowledge replaced helplessness, and where compassion guided every decision. Kojo ensured every service was affordable, and families in need received subsidies without shame. He believed no one should suffer because of poverty. His heart was fixed on making health a basic right, not a privilege. As months passed, stories of lives saved spread throughout the region. A baby delivered safely, a fever treated before reaching danger, an elder walking again after months of illness. Hope House became more than a clinic. It became a symbol of progress, a sanctuary of healing, and another testament to the mission Kojo carried within him. But prosperity as Kojo learned, does not come without resistance. As Nsakara blossomed into a thriving village full of trade, education, health services, and unity, jealous whispers began drifting from distant communities. Rumors began to spread beyond the village paths. No one succeeds like this without spiritual tricks. Envy grew like a creeping weed. They traveled under the cover of night, hiding their intentions behind forced smiles and false praise whenever they passed through Nsakara. During the day, their first act of sabotage came swiftly. One night, they slipped into the grain store, one of Kojo's proudest achievements, and vandalized it. They tore open sacks, contaminated supplies, and scattered food across the dusty floor. By morning, the village had lost a significant portion of its precious harvest. Fear stirred, uncertainty clouded minds. Not long after, the saboteurs spread dangerous lies. No man grows this successful without forbidden magic. Some villagers, unsettled by the sudden grain loss, hesitated. Doubt crept in like a thin shadow. Even goodwill can tremble under the weight of uncertainty. But Kojo did not respond with anger or accusation. Instead, he called for a village gathering beneath the ancient baobab tree, the same tree where elders once met to discuss his childhood affliction. Standing before the crowd, Kojo spoke with calm strength. "I have known darkness," he said. "I have felt its grip, and I know what saved me: faith, love, and the light that comes from unity." He reminded them of Amadu's spring, the school of light, Hope House, and every act of service that had shaped Nsakara's renewal. He spoke of his childhood battle, how evil once tried to take him and how divine grace delivered him. "Everything I have built," Kojo continued, "is through the strength God gave me and the hands of this community. Let no lie erase the truth we have lived together." His words cut through confusion like sunlight piercing a fog. Villagers looked around at the projects he'd completed, the lives saved, the children learning, the fields thriving. Suddenly, the rumors seemed absurd shadows without substance. One by one, they stood behind Kojo, declaring their trust. When confronted by the united village, the saboteurs crumbled beneath guilt and fear. Their lies unraveled. They confessed to everything: jealousy, vandalism, slander, rather than seek revenge. Kojo insisted on mercy. He believed that healing, not hatred, strengthened a community. And just like that, peace returned to Nsakara. The lies faded like smoke. The saboteurs were forgiven, though watched carefully. The people learned a profound truth: to celebrate their restored unity and progress. The elders announced a grand festival, one unlike anything Nsakara had witnessed in decades. Word traveled quickly across the hills and dusty footpaths, carried by traders, wandering storytellers, and farmers returning from their fields. People from surrounding villages arrived with gifts, stories, and blessings. Some brought baskets overflowing with plantains and shea nuts. Others carried delicately carved wooden figurines meant to honor the ancestors. A few arrived simply with warm embraces and prayers for continued prosperity. The entire community decorated the streets with colorful cloth and palm leaves. The air shimmered with bright patterns of red, gold, and deep green. Children climbed onto rooftops to hang long strips of kente, their laughter floating through the village like birdsong. Drums echoed through the valley as dancers performed ancient warrior dances. The rhythms grew louder as the sun dipped low, creating a heartbeat that all of Nsakara seemed to move to. Dust swirled beneath the dancers' feet, while their shadows stretched across the flickering torchlight. Kojo was honored as the cherished guest of the celebration. Though he felt humbled by the attention, he bowed respectfully, feeling the weight of gratitude more deeply than any gift placed before him. As Kojo's wisdom and success grew, many young people sought his guidance. They came shyly at first, unsure if they were worthy of his time. But Kojo welcomed them all with the same warm smile. He received them with patience, understanding that mentorship was another form of service, one that demanded as much heart as any battle he had ever fought. Kojo taught them to approach life with integrity, discipline, and empathy, qualities he believed were the foundation of true strength. He encouraged them to use their talents for the good of the community. A gift, he often said, is a seed planted where others can find shade. Every evening, young men and women gathered near his home for lessons in leadership and trade. The sessions began under the pale blue sky and often stretched beyond dusk. Lit by lanterns that glowed like fireflies, Kojo taught them farming techniques, business strategies, and moral principles passed down through generations. He blended old wisdom with new methods, giving the youth tools to succeed in both tradition and modernity. He reminded them that success without kindness was hollow and temporary. His words settled into their hearts, strengthening them in ways that wealth alone never could. His students grew confident, determined to follow in his footsteps. They walked with straighter backs, minds filled with possibilities, and spirits rooted in humility. Parents thanked Kojo for giving their children a new path toward achievement. Some wept openly, remembering a time when the village had been plagued by fear and struggle. The village soon became known for producing hard-working, well-educated youths, young leaders whose reputation spread far beyond their borders. Kojo saw in them the future architects of Nsakara's destiny. His mentorship became a quiet but powerful legacy shaping generations to come. During the festival, the villagers presented him with a carved staff symbolizing leadership and protection. Its handle bore intricate engravings of rivers, mountains, and birds in flight, symbols of wisdom guiding life's journey. Elders spoke of Kojo's courage, faith, and unwavering dedication to uplifting everyone, not just the powerful. Their voices trembled with emotion as they recounted memories of the village's darkest days and how Kojo had helped lead them into the light. Children from the school of light performed songs they composed for the occasion. Their sweet voices blended like wind chimes, singing of bravery, unity, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Women cooked large meals of jollof rice, yams, and spicy pepper soups to feed everyone. The aroma filled the air so thickly that even travelers on distant paths could smell the celebration rising from Nsakara. The night ended with prayers thanking God for transforming their once troubled village. Kojo stood quietly, overwhelmed by gratitude for how far they had come. Tears welled in his eyes, not from sorrow, but from every hardship, every sacrifice had guided them to this moment. One challenge that remained was the poor condition of the road leading to Nsakara, a narrow, winding path that turned treacherous each time the sky released its heavy rains. Traders avoided it whenever clouds gathered, and many villagers felt trapped between the hills and the thick forest travelers struggled with. Muddy paths during the rainy season, slowing trade and progress. Some slipped and lost their goods in the muck. Others were forced to camp overnight in the open because the road became impassable. Everyone knew the village's transformation would remain incomplete unless this obstacle was addressed. Kojo decided the village needed a proper road to connect them with larger towns. A community cannot grow if its doors remain half-closed, he told the elders. They agreed wholeheartedly. He consulted engineers from neighboring districts and purchased tools needed for the project: shovels, strong ropes, compacting equipment, and surveying instruments. The villagers watched with fascination as the engineers marked out the land and studied the soil. Villagers volunteered, proud to be part of another transformative effort. Farmers came with hoes and cutlasses. Hunters brought ropes and machetes. Women carried bundles of food to feed the workers. Even the elders joined in by clearing small branches or directing workflow. Together, they cleared bushes, filled potholes, and reinforced the soil. Under the blazing sun, the sound of coordinated labor echoed through the valley, metals striking earth, voices calling instructions, and laughter rising despite the exhaustion. The construction lasted several months, but brought the community closer than ever. People who had long been indifferent toward each other now shared meals and jokes on the roadside. Bonds formed in the dust and sweat, weaving a new sense of unity. Children watched eagerly as the road took shape, imagining new possibilities: larger schools, traveling merchants, new festivals, and opportunities their parents had never dreamed of. When it was finished, market access improved dramatically. What once took hours of struggling through mud could now be crossed with ease in minutes. Traders visited more often, bringing new goods and opportunities, fabrics from distant towns, spices previously unknown to Nsakara, and tools that made farming more efficient. The road was named Kojo, Esway, in his honor, though he insisted it belonged to everyone. It is the people's strength that built this, he said, but the villagers quietly kept the name, knowing the truth of his leadership. The new connection accelerated Nsakara's growth and opened doors to the outside world. Students traveled for schooling, merchants expanded their businesses, and curious travelers flocked to see the village that had transformed itself through unity. With increased trade flowing steadily along the new road, Kojo envisioned a proper marketplace that could serve the village sustainably. The old trading spot, just a dusty clearing beneath a mango tree, could no longer keep up with the rising activity. He designed sturdy stalls for traders, ensuring fair space for everyone, regardless of their background. He spoke often about equality. A prosperous market must welcome both the wealthy and the humble. Craftsmen, farmers, and merchants came together to build the structures. Carpenters shaped wooden beams, blacksmiths forged nails and hinges. Women created colorful canopies from woven fabric to shade the stalls. The market quickly filled with vibrant colors, from woven cloths, fresh fruits, aromatic spices, and pottery painted with intricate tribal patterns. Musicians played drums and flutes, their melodies drifting through the lively aisles. Women sold fresh vegetables, while men displayed handmade tools and crafts. Children ran between stalls, helping their parents while sneaking bites of roasted maize. The market became a bustling center of economic activity every week. Before long, people referred to it simply as the heart of Nsakara. Travelers from neighboring regions visited to buy goods and observe Nsakara's transformation. Some even asked Kojo for advice on developing markets in their own communities. Kojo implemented a small tax system used to maintain cleanliness and security. He documented every transaction transparently, ensuring no funds were misused. Villagers appreciated the orderliness and fairness he ensured. The market was clean, safe, and well-managed, an example of what thoughtful leadership could achieve. Festivals and cultural events were held in the open square at the market's center. Drumming competitions, storytelling nights, and harvest celebrations filled the space with life throughout the year. The marketplace strengthened Nsakara's economy more than any previous venture. Families earned more, savings increased, and young people found new opportunities in trade. Kojo's dream of a prosperous village was becoming a living reality. One day, Kojo received unexpected word that Father Amadu, the man who had rescued him during his darkest hour, had returned to a nearby region. The message came from a traveling trader who mentioned seeing an elderly priest serving in a humble parish close to the river. Kojo felt his heart tremble. Memories of that life-changing night rushed back. The fear, the prayers, and the gentle hands that had lifted him out of danger. Filled with emotion, Kojo gathered a delegation to visit the priest. Elders, youth leaders, and close companions insisted on joining him. They considered Amadu a hero whose kindness had shaped the destiny of their entire village. They traveled at dawn, walking through the cool morning breeze until they reached the small mission house. They found Father Amadu older, his hair silvered with age, but still glowing with the humility he carried everywhere. His gentle smile remained unchanged, and his eyes, though softened by time, held the same compassion that once saved a frightened boy. Kojo knelt before him, overwhelmed with gratitude for the deliverance that saved his life. His voice trembled as he whispered, "You saved me when I could not save myself. Everything I am, everything Nsakara has become, began with your act of mercy." Father Amadu lifted him compassionately and embraced him. "My son," he said softly, "I only lit a small flame. You carried it far beyond anything I could imagine." Pride and affection radiated from his voice. The villagers shared stories of the prosperity Kojo brought to Nsakara. How the once struggling settlement had become a beacon of hope. They spoke of clean water flowing from the well, children learning in the school of light, the bustling marketplace, and the health center that saved countless lives. The priest blessed them and prayed for continued peace and growth. His prayers felt like a gentle rain falling on fertile soil, refreshing, affirming, and full of grace. Kojo invited him back to the village to see the transformation firsthand. Father Amadu agreed, touched by the invitation and eager to witness the fruits of a journey he never knew had continued. So far, when Amadu arrived, he saw the well, the school, the health center, and the market. He paused at each sight, asking questions, offering smiles, and marveling at what unity had accomplished. Children ran to greet him, their voices calling his name with joy, though they had only heard stories of him. Tears filled his eyes as he realized the boy he once saved had become a savior to many. The weight of that revelation moved him deeply, and he wiped his eyes with trembling hands. Kojo built a statue in honor of Father Amadu near the well named after him. The sculpture depicted the priest offering a helping hand symbolizing compassion that transforms lives. Villagers gathered for the unveiling ceremony, singing songs of gratitude. The visit deepened Kojo's resolve to continue uplifting his people. He felt renewed, strengthened by the reminder that one act of kindness could ignite an entire movement of transformation. With new partnerships and recognition, Kojo set his sights on expanding beyond Nsakara. He realized that progress should not remain confined to a single community. When so many others suffered in silence, he began training leaders from neighboring villages so they could replicate his model. Under his guidance, they studied governance, community planning, financial transparency, and conflict resolution. He taught them not only what to do, but why it mattered. These leaders visited Nsakara frequently to observe its systems and structures. They attended market operations, sat in on school administration meetings, and toured the health center to understand how to run such facilities effectively. Kojo donated resources to help them build their own wells, schools, and markets. He shared tools, funding, training materials, and even volunteers who were eager to support the mission. His vision grew from a single village to an entire region, connected by shared values and a commitment to progress. He often reminded everyone, development is not a monument to be admired. It is a responsibility to be shared. He emphasized that development must be rooted in compassion and accountability. Communities learned to prioritize integrity and fairness, ensuring that leaders served the people, not themselves. The transformation spread steadily, inspiring communities far beyond Nsakara. Kojo was invited to speak at gatherings where chiefs and elders sought guidance. In town squares, under the shade of baobab trees, and inside village halls, he shared stories of resilience, justice, and unity. Though honored, he remained humble, crediting divine grace for everything. More partnerships formed, fueling greater progress across the land. Organizations offered support, young people volunteered in record numbers, and neighboring towns began collaborating instead of competing. Kojo's impact became a testament to what one life, once oppressed by darkness, could become. His story traveled far beyond the borders of his homeland, reminding countless souls that redemption is powerful, and hope once planted can grow beyond imagination. Word spread for weeks, and by dawn on the appointed day, people from distant hamlets were already making their way toward the central grounds, carrying baskets, musical instruments, and hand-woven banners that fluttered in the morning breeze. Villagers brought their finest crops, crafts, and foods, yams polished to a shine. Baskets dyed with natural pigments, smoked fish seasoned with secret family blends, and towering gourds of sweet palm wine. They displayed them proudly, each gift a testament to the hard work that had reshaped their lives. The rhythm seemed to summon joy itself. Even the elders swayed gently, their feet moving to beats they remembered from youth. The festival honored Kojo, whose courage and leadership had transformed scarcity into abundance. Mothers lifted their babies for him to bless, and young men greeted him with firm hand clasps full of respect. Their colorful costumes shimmered as they spun, leaped, and stamped their feet. Earning thunderous applause, traders approached Kojo with gifts finely crafted knives, rare spices, embroidered cloth. But he accepted only those that could benefit the community. Hoes for the farms, books for the school, medicines for the health center. His refusal of personal luxuries only deepened the people's admiration. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, elders crowned him Son of Light, a title reserved for those who brought wisdom, healing, and renewal. They said he had journeyed from spiritual darkness into leadership, guiding others along a path he once feared to walk. He encouraged unity, discipline, and compassion, reminding everyone that true prosperity belonged not to a single individual, but to the entire region. When one field blooms, he said, the wind carries seeds to another. His words echoed long after he stepped down from the platform. The festival ended with a powerful prayer for protection and continued blessings. Torches were raised to the sky as voices united in gratitude. People returned to their homes filled with hope, carrying memories they would recount to their grandchildren. In the weeks following the festival, Kojo grew increasingly reflective. He realized that the changes he had made would have little meaning if they faded after his lifetime. A legacy, he understood, must be rooted in the people, not in the hero. He began by establishing committees to manage the school, the market, the farms, and the health center. Each committee was carefully selected, mixing elders who carried wisdom and younger adults who carried energy. Kojo ensured they were trained to operate transparently and responsibly, with clear records, open meetings, and shared decision-making. Youth groups were formed to maintain roads, footpaths, wells, and community structures, equipped with tools and guided by experienced mentors. These young volunteers not only worked but also learned leadership, cooperation, and pride in their surroundings. Kojo introduced scholarship programs for brilliant students with big dreams, future doctors, teachers, engineers, and leaders. He wanted the brightest minds to see their village as a place worth returning to, a soil fertile enough for their ambitions to grow. For those with strength in their hands rather than books, he funded apprenticeships in carpentry, pottery, metalwork, farming technology, and weaving, ensuring dignity and opportunity for every path. His initiatives strengthened the foundation for long-term progress. Slowly, the village transformed from a place dependent on heroes to one guided by systems and shared responsibility. For the first time, people felt confident that prosperity would continue even if the winds of fate shifted. To preserve the knowledge they had gained, the village documented their systems, how markets were run, how harvests were stored, how teachers rotated, how water sources were protected. Future leaders, Kojo hoped, would not have to begin from nothing. Meanwhile, he began writing the story of his life, not to glorify himself, but to capture the lessons, failures, and revelations that had shaped his journey. Let my mistakes guide those who come after me, he said quietly, dipping his pen into ink late at night. The elders assured him that his legacy was already rooted, already spoken of with reverence. But Kojo shook his head. To him, legacy was not a fixed monument. Legacies must be living, growing, and evolving, shaped by the hands of each new generation. And deep within him, a fire continued to burn, a vision far greater than anything he had accomplished so far. A vision of schools in every village, of markets bustling with trade, of children unafraid of hunger, of elders who could rest knowing their people were secure. Kojo's story was far from over. His legacy was only beginning to take shape. After many years of service, Kojo looked around and saw everything he once dreamed now standing proudly before him. What had begun as a desperate hope carried in the heart of a frightened young man had become a living reality. The village had schools that echoed with laughter and curiosity, clinics where healing hands worked tirelessly, markets bustling with vibrant trade, roads smooth enough for swift travel, and thriving farms that fed not only Nsakara but neighboring communities as well. Children who once knew only struggle now walked with hope and ambition. Their faces shone with the joy of possibility, their books tucked under their arms as they hurried to lessons at the School of Light. Traders traveled freely, carrying prosperity across regions. Caravans moved along Kojo's way, connecting distant settlements in a network of commerce and friendship. The health centers saved countless lives each year, mothers in childbirth, wounded farmers, elders suffering from fevers. People spoke of it with reverence, grateful for the life it breathed into the village. The School of Light produced teachers, nurses, builders, and entrepreneurs. Young men and women who once had no paths now forged their own, returning to uplift their families and communities. The marketplace created wealth for families who once lived in poverty. Small stalls grew into thriving businesses, savings increased, children entered schools their parents had never dreamed of attending. Kojo realized he had fulfilled the dream given to him in the vision so long ago. The prophecy etched in his heart had unfolded piece by piece, not through magic, but through faith and collective effort. Yet he also knew the journey was not his alone, it belonged to the entire community. Every hand that carried a stone, every prayer whispered at dawn, every sacrifice made in silence had shaped Nsakara's destiny. He sat beside Amadu's spring, remembering the priest who started it all. The water flowed gently, shimmering beneath the sunlight as though carrying fragments of the past within its ripples. Tears of gratitude filled his eyes as he whispered a prayer of thanks for deliverance, for guidance, for the people who walked the long road with him. Kojo felt peace, knowing light had fully triumphed where darkness once tried to reign. The shadows that once haunted the village were now distant memories, replaced by hope that illuminated every home. Kojo grew older, but remained a cherished guide and elder in the community. His steps slowed, yet his presence carried the weight of wisdom and history. His hair turned gray, yet his spirit shone brighter than ever. Time had softened his features, but sharpened his insight, making his counsel more sought after with each passing year. Children ran to him for stories of faith, courage, and transformation. They gathered at his feet in the evenings, listening intently as he recounted tales of storms weathered and miracles witnessed. Elders consulted him whenever major decisions needed wisdom. Kojo's voice, calm and measured, had a way of bringing clarity even in the most complicated matters. Travelers visited Nsakara just to see the man who had overcome demons and built a legacy of prosperity. Some came out of curiosity, others seeking guidance, and many simply to thank him for inspiring change in their own communities. Kojo spent his days walking through the village he helped create, smiling at every familiar face. Children greeted him joyfully. Farmers waved from their fields. Traders offered him fruits and bread as gestures of gratitude. Each building, road, and field reminded him of how far they had come. Every corner of Nsakara held a story, a memory, a testament to resilience. At night, he sat beneath the baobab tree where Father Amadu once blessed him. The stars above glittered like tiny lamps of hope, and the cool breeze carried distant echoes of prayers once whispered in desperation. He thanked God for turning his suffering into a source of strength for many. His journey had begun in fear, but it had ended in purpose on arc only divine grace could shape. When Kojo finally passed peacefully in his sleep, the entire region mourned. Bells rang, fires burned softly through the night, and thousands gathered to honor the man who had transformed generations. They honored him with a memorial called the Eternal Light, symbolizing his life's impact. The monument featured a flame carved from stone, representing the spirit he ignited in the hearts of his people. His story lived on, teaching future generations that faith, courage, and compassion can transform any darkness into everlasting light. Children recited his lessons, elders preserved his memory, and visitors whispered his name with reverence.